Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Future Forecasting Group. Today, I have put together a little target here for the team. They did not know I was behind this one, so this is should be an interesting session here, and we're gonna go down the rabbit hole here. So, the target feedback here. Um, a person was the I guess you can call it like the anchor point here for this target. This person, Jose Pedro Freitas, who's from Brazil. And the cue here was the viewer will describe, he also goes by the name Arrigo. So the viewer will describe Arrigo and the methods used by Arrigo in his practice. So the person was a target, but really I was trying to find out what's behind it. What's the process behind what this person does? So what does this person do? There, this was the original tasking document there. So I read a book a while back. It was called Arrigo, Surgeon of the Rusty Knife. And it was the amazing story of the Brazilian peasant who slashed his patients with rusty knives, used no anesthetics, had no medical training, yet confounded the world with thousands of miraculous cures. So this was a pretty famous story of a person who was like a spiritual or mediumistic healer in Brazil. So, he was born in 1918 and he died in 1971. He was a Brazilian mediumistic healer. He was had the apparent ability to make instant diagnoses. He performed surgery without anesthetic, and usually there was like little to no bleeding and no pain. He was observed by doctors to successfully treat patients that were deemed incurable. Many of them had inoperable cancers and other serious health conditions. He did it, his story is that he was possessed or channeling a spirit doctor in a trance state when he did these things. He treated hundreds of patients on a daily basis, and he never accepted money or gifts for what he did. So the methods, this is really what the remote viewing I was hoping to get some insight on how exactly did this happen. Arrigo worked by entering a trance state during which he appeared to be a different personality. He held his head higher and spoke with a German accent. His eyes seemed to glaze out of focus, and that's when he would begin seeing patients. Diagnosis was instantaneous. He did not request to see, records or ask any questions. For some, he would write out a prescription at an incredible speed, as if his hand were slipping across a sheet of ice. The medicines that he would prescribe were usually considered obsolete, or some of them had not yet reached Brazil. They were like, medicines that originated in Germany. Some patients, Arrigo carried out rudimentary surgery. He would plunge, a paring knife into a cyst or a tumor and quickly remove it. The patient would often just be standing against the wall or maybe lying on a table. He would do this in a matter of minutes with an unsterilized knife or scalpel, and the patient would generally be able to get up. And that's why they kind of call him the surgeon of the rusty knife. He would kind of just use the same knife on everyone and just like wipe it on his shirt after and bring on the next person. No anesthesia, no antisepsis, cauterization or stitches were not used, and the incisions would usually close themselves. And he was been observed numerous times to stop blood flow by prayer, by just asking for it to happen. That's a picture there of the knife that he would use, and he's most famous for the eye surgeries that he would do. And you can see a picture there. He would just take the knife and literally shove it up in people's under their eyes and touch their eyes directly with the blade while they're fully awake and conscious, and they wouldn't feel any pain. In the book, Andrea Puharich, who's also he's come up and he was investigated Arrigo and some other psi phenomenon. He went to study Arrigo and made videos, some of which I'll show some clips here in the presentation. And I used the video as that was kind of the cueing, because I didn't want to insert any type of woo into the target myself. I didn't want to say describe the spirit. I didn't want to make any assumptions about it. So I just used the video clip as kind of the anchoring point for the remote viewers. But Puharich himself visited as a patient to Arrigo for treatment of a large, rather annoying but benign tumor on the inside of his right elbow. It had been checked by his own doctor, and the lymphoma was painlessly extracted with the Brazilian version of a Swiss Army knife in 5 seconds by Arrigo, with an 8mm camera rolling. After Puharich returned to the clinic in Brazil, one day Arrigo guided him to take a hold of the surgical knife and plunge it in behind the patient's eye to experience it for himself. So he kind of took Puharich's arm and let him feel what it's like to push the knife in someone's eye. And he noticed that there seemed to be some kind of repellent force that inexplicably worked for Arrigo, but for no one else when it came to this maneuver, except when Arrigo guided his hand. The spirit possession or channeling part of it, this is the woo-woo that I was hoping or was looking to see if what would come up in the sessions. And this is something called, or some intelligence, we don't know, but Dr. Fritz is the name of this thing. And in his early 30s, Arrigo began suffering a recurring dream, sometimes accompanied by severe headaches. It usually took place in an operating room where doctors and nurses worked on a patient led by a doctor with a stout physique and bald head. The doctor spoke with a guttural German voice. The doctor gave his name as Adolfo Fritz and said he had died during an explosion in World War I, with his work on Earth unfinished, and he had chosen Arrigo as the living vessel to carry on his work, aided by other deceased doctors. Arrigo's initial reaction was one of panic. He consulted doctors and his priests. Medical examination revealed nothing wrong, and the priest warned him against spiritism and even attempted an exorcism at one point. And he kind of went to his local spiritualist church and kind of got familiar with the whole idea of a spirit doctor and channeling and things like that. So he would not remember after the surgeries are done. He would kind of snap out of it and not remember what happened. After Arrigo's death, and this kind of makes this one pretty interesting, which is another reason why I wanted to task it out, is after Arrigo died, this Dr. Fritz personality or intelligence has kind of possessed other doctors. There's more doctors. These are two videos here of more recent doctors, and you could see the videos of them doing some pretty, scary stuff, I would say, without anesthetic and no pain. The patients sit there, and this Arrigo character intelligence has worked through these doctors and probably still going on till today. Fuller stated rhetorically, the research problem is to be considered eventually would be trying to identify the nature of the Dr. Fritz intelligence. Was it a creative process similar to a composer hearing the music he's about to create and score? Was it simply a form of articulating Arrigo's unconscious thoughts? Or was it a paranormal manifestation of a source of intelligence outside Arrigo's personal memory and experience, which he called Dr. Fritz? After the death of Arrigo, Dr. Fritz worked through others, performing the same kinds of operations and speaking in the German accent. This Dr. Fritz claims to treat the astral or energy body during the psychic surgery and criticizes our modern medical practices for only treating symptoms of the physical body. And so, Arrigo didn't have any medical treatment. He was kind of like a really poor guy from Brazil. So him doing these kind of things were seen as pretty amazing, which is why people went to go investigate. And so I put a couple clips here of the video that I used for the tasking, so I'm just going to play some short. There's no sound here, and some of it might be a little squeamish, like it shows kind of like knives up against people's eyes and some cutting and stuff like that.
Do you know what year this video was made?
This is the late 60s, 68 and 68 to 69.
Thank you.
Do we have any idea what's happening here?
This is them kind of wiring him up and checking his, his pulses and his bodily readings and stuff before he went to do his surgery. This is like Puharich and Fuller. This is the videos that they made. Here is a clip of him doing the eye surgery.
He leaves little to be desired with his bedside manner here.
Yeah, he's pretty, pretty rough there. I mean, it's kind of, I mean, you'd think someone would be screaming in pain if that was happening. And then here's one more cutting kind of like a tumor on someone's head. Kind of gnarly. So yeah, what's going on here? So tasking this out, the idea floating around in my head was, what would the viewers describe here? Just a person doing a normal operation, maybe it's placebo effect, some kind of trickery, camera tricks, or just people acting. Would they describe woo-woo metaphysical things like some kind of spiritual energetics, time travel, interaction type thing, which maybe would support the idea of the Dr. Fritz hypothesis? Or would they describe some kind of military thing? If this Dr. Fritz was a person who actually lived back in 1918, who died in World War I and was the originator of those surgical techniques. So that was kind of my that's the story behind the tasking there. So we can jump into the data, and I put together an analysis after to see how it all comes together.
You just showed this guy putting a knife in somebody's eye for an eye problem, right? Okay. So we just worked this target that was this supposed psychic surgeon who uses what looked like a dull or, not very clean knife, shoving it into this guy's eye. I worked this target and I had a complete bilocation where I was there and I saw him. The guy didn't see, I didn't see the guy sitting up. I saw a guy laying down, but I saw this medium built guy, and it's not a medical place, but it's kind of a small room. And he's working urgently and not tentatively, and he's not in doctor scrub. So I get that. As soon as I finished the session, I had an eye problem. I've had flashes and floaters, and I had to go to the ophthalmologist and have my pupils dilated and have them look at my eyes. They thought my retina had detached. It didn't, but I've been. That's strange.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting one there. You also said he might be in military clothing, which, I mean, going with the story here,
Yeah.
apparently this was a deceased military doctor working through him, so it could go both ways there. But yeah, I thought
Yeah.
that was a good one.
Okay. So we'll get to the full debrief. Somebody else can go first. I just want to throw that in.